And thanks, Katie. Well, good morning. Welcome to River City. How we doing? Good. My name's Rob, and I'm on the leadership team here. Happy to worship with you this morning. So it's nearing the end of the summer, but this summer, Bree and I were mostly home, and so we were like, let's make some gardens. And we started with seeds. Whenever you start with seeds, I don't know, it's like March or before that, I don't know. I obviously did a lot of research into having gardens. And the seeds started growing, and that's cool. And then I kind of forgot about them, and they kind of died. And then I was like, maybe they just need real light. So I'll put them on our porch, and then they really died because it was still cold. But I had already built garden beds. I had already placed them. I had already borrowed my neighbor's truck to get compost from the city compost and filled up the soil in the garden beds. And so there was okay, now we'll buy some plants, I guess. We had already promised our kids that it was going to be awesome, parents, when you tell your kids that you're going to do something and it's going to be amazing, and there's all that excitement building with your kids, and then maybe it's not going to be amazing. That's where we're at. But it's it's fine. We have a garden bed of flower plants, and we have a garden bed of some vegetables, and it's fine. It's not amazing, right? We've got some tomatoes on there. They're slowly turning red, and there's, I think, a cucumber growing, and we've gotten a couple jalapenos. It's just not great, right? Some people are they're getting abundance of yield, and ours is just it's fine. It is what it is. We did the best we could. I could have researched how to cut certain types of plants, and I could have listened to Brad when he told me how to mix soil properly with all this other stuff. But he went on for a while, and I was just this sounds like a lot of work. And I could have I cut down some trees that were overhanging, but I could have cut down more and foreseen how they would grow in the summer and block some of the sunlight. That's probably the main issue. And Bree, I asked Bree last night, how do you feel about our gardens? And she was I didn't really expect anything, so it's cool. And I was oh, great. Which is perfect for Bree and I, because I'm the dreamer, we're gonna do this thing and it's gonna be amazing. And Bree's the day-to-day person. If you're an Office fan, it's I'm Michael Scott and she is Jim. She covers the day-to-days. I cover big picture stuff. It's really good. We did the best we could, and we just didn't get the results we were looking for. It's just reality. It is what it is. It's not terrible, but it's not what I expected. And I feel like as we've been going through John 13 through the end of 17, that's kind of how I feel maybe the feeling the disciples have. As Jesus is he's washed their feet, they're eating dinner, that's all centered around this meal. They had the triumphal entry where people were praising their names and stuff, and then Jesus starts all these teachings and lectures, and they're confused and they're not really sure what's going on. It's just not the dinner they expected, but it's good. Jesus is obviously teaching them stuff, but they certainly didn't expect it at all. And then I also think sometimes we as Christians also have this just it's fine, but it's not really what I expected or hoped for with our experience of the Christian faith, maybe, right? Could my relationship with Jesus be better? Maybe. But it's not fully what I'm expecting in this moment or in this season of life. Could I experience deeper community with others? Sure, but oh man, who has time for that? Or is intimacy with Jesus really even a thing? And if it is a thing, do I even want it? If I'm honest with myself, I think sometimes some of us feel we're doing all the right things. We've got the right compost in there, it's getting some sunlight, but for some reason it's just we're just not getting the results or the growth that we were hoping for. So I don't know, it is what it is, right? But in John 15, it's weird because we've been at this dinner table for 2 whole chapters. Jesus has washed their feet, they've eaten a meal, maybe it was the Passover meal, and then in John 14 it ends with he says, get up, let's leave this place. But then it's almost he's hey, you know what, one more thing, sit back down, let's get some more dessert in here, I got more to say. They keep going. And so that's where we're at as we lean into what I think are some of the most important things for Jesus' followers. He's leaning into what he's calling them to do because he knows he is leaving, and they don't fully get it. It's not fully what they're expecting, but it's going to be important for the future. And so that's where we're at today. I'm going to reread some of John 15 that Katie read for us. So verses 1 through 5. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Every branch in me that does not produce fruit, he removes, and he prunes every branch that does produce fruit, so that it will produce more fruit. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I in you. Just as a branch is unable to produce fruit by itself unless it remains on the vine, neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit, because you can do nothing without me. The idea of God's people being a branch or a garden or a vineyard, it's widespread in the Old Testament. This is not an example that Jesus just pulls out of anywhere. He pulls it out of scripture that he has memorized, that has lived, that is real in his life. And one of the more prominent spots is in Isaiah 5. We're not going to flip there, but a little summary is God really cares about his people. He really cares about a vineyard. And he's given this vineyard that he loves, Isaiah 5 says. I love my vineyard. And he has given it everything they need for production, for abundant production. He was way better than I was. He cut down all the trees so that sunlight would get in. He did mix the compost correctly. He did cut off branches and everything. And yet the vineyard is not producing. It is not doing what it's supposed to do. It's remaining unfaithful to God. And so as Isaiah 5 goes on, it's not yielding the fruit he expects. And so God destroys the vineyard. He gets rid of it. He says, why should I tend to a vineyard that will never bear fruit? It's pretty bleak. But then in Isaiah 27, another vineyard is talked about. A future vineyard is promised. Isaiah 27, 2 through 6. And this vineyard is beautiful. It's fruitful. It's at peace. There's no conflict in this vineyard. And its fruit fills the whole world. It is abundant with production. And it's a promised vineyard that will happen. And then Jesus comes on the scene and he says, I am the true vine. And my Father is the gardener. You are the branches. He's taking this promise and he's applying it to believers in him and saying, if you want to bear fruit, then you must be connected to the vine. Because Jesus is the life source of the branches. If you want to bear fruit, which is what a branch should do, you must draw your life from the vine. There is no other way. And God, the Father is the gardener or farmer. He's the one who meticulously, by the work of the Spirit, is tending to the vineyard. He's tying branches up to trellises. He's trimming back bad growth. He's cutting bad fruit off so that the future fruit is better. After the season, he's cutting the plant down as far as it can so that next year it grows up larger and yields even more. He's making sure bugs don't destroy it. My grandpa's like an avid gardener. His backyard is beautiful and perfect. I obviously didn't learn a ton from him since mine is just, it's fine. But over the years, he has taught me a lot. He is meticulous in how he cares for each plant. He knows the plant. He knows what it needs. He knows that different plants need different soil. He knows that some need different pHs than others in order to truly flower or bring about their fruit. He knows what they need. He knows that when you take a plant inside for the winter, it's going to grow a lot, but that's apparently bad growth because, quote, it hasn't grown with any struggle. It's growth that's easy. So when he brings it back outside, he cuts it down so that when it grows again, it's experienced the wind and experienced the climate. He knows his plants. And God is a gardener like this, but even better. He meticulously works his vineyard to bring about the results that he wants. Jesus is the life source, and the Spirit is supplying all of this. Don't miss that the Trinity is at work to bring about growth in you. The Trinity is at work to bring about growth in you. We'll come back to that thought as we keep going. In verses 3 and 5, I'm going to reread those. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. So remain in me and I in you, just as a branch is unable to produce fruit by itself. I am the vine, you are the branches, and the one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit. What's so beautiful about verse 3 is Jesus saying, you are not clean because you bear fruit. Okay, that's important. I'm going to say it again. You are not clean because you bear fruit. You bear fruit because you are clean. Our faith is not dependent on our fruit. Our fruit is only ever a result of faith in Jesus and connection to Jesus. Jesus has made you clean so that you will bear fruit. And praise God, because I can't bring about fruit out of myself. Jesus makes that really clear. You cannot bring fruit unless you remain in me. Jesus says that unless the branch is intimately connected to the vine, unless it remains on the vine, unless it's drawing life from the vine, you cannot bear fruit. But the good news is if by the Spirit you draw life from Jesus, God will prune you and will produce much fruit that glorifies him. And that word remain, it's so important. Honestly, if you wanted to read a study on the word remain, you should read 1 John this week. Just like the whole thing, 1 John, and look for the word remain as you read 1 John, who's the same author as the Gospel of John. But it's this Greek word meno. It means to remain or persist or stay. Some of your translations might say abide. It actually comes from the same family of words, and this is really cool, as dwelling place. A dwelling place. It carries both a receptive weight to it, something you receive, and it carries an active weight, something you do. Imagine you're home in the evening. Like the house is calm. If you have kids, they're asleep. They went to sleep easily, right? Everything's already cleaned up. Dishes are done. Everything's put away. Nothing is on your to-do list. Work is not even close to being on your mind. And your house is just inviting you to rest, to abide, to stay in that place. That's the receptive side of the word meno, to remain. And yet, it also carries an active side to it. It's the fullness of what John means, as if you've been with us through the study in the Gospel of John, when he's saying believe or know or follow Jesus. That is to abide, to remain. It's an active decision of the will that you do empowered by the Spirit. It's something so beautiful, though, at the same time. Like, what better thing to dwell in, to fight, to remain in than the love of Jesus? What better thing to abide in than the life of Jesus? What better thing to live in than the fruit-bearing power of Jesus? There is no better place to be connected to, no higher calling than to remain, to abide, to dwell. If anyone does not remain in me, verse 6, he is thrown aside like a branch and he withers. They gather them, throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you want, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you produce much fruit and prove to be my disciples. I think sometimes we as believers, we get so quickly into whether or not a person can lose their faith. And it causes us to not feel the weight of some of the warning passages, because what we want to be is see, this verse is you definitely can lose your faith, so I definitely am going to. Right? Or, well, if you're truly a believer, you never lose your faith. And personally, I honestly think that this verse is actually pretty specific to Jewish culture and to Jewish believers that weren't fully believing in Jesus. And so Jesus is using this word as vineyard and branches, connecting back to Jews in this specific time. But at the same time, we can look at this and see this for ourselves. And here's what I want to say is that we at River City believe in perseverance of believers. meaning that we believe that your salvation, your sanctification, your growth is much more about God than it is about you. And God is going to be faithful to himself. Like if he has called you to believe, then he will see you to completion. But even with saying all that, like we can miss the weightiness of this warning. I want to remind you that Jesus has already said in chapter 15 that you are already clean. That you are already clean. And later in chapter 17, as he's praying, he is going to say, Father, thank you that I have not lost a single disciple that you have given to me. Jesus is clear that he is going to continue you on if you are a true believer in him. And yet the warning here is also clear, that the life and the fruitfulness of the branches depends on the life-giving power of the vine. And if you are not attached to the vine, then you have ceased to be receptive of the life that comes from the vine, and you will not bear fruit. And if you don't bear fruit over your life, then the vine cannot be in you. And if the vine is not in you, then you are not in him. Fruit is the evidence of the life of the vine in the branch. Fruit is the evidence of the life of the vine in the branch. Fruit does not make you clean, but it could be evidence that you are clean. So what is fruit? Clearly, Jesus cares about it. I think a lot of your brains, if you grew up in the church, you might jump to Galatians and the fruit of the Spirit. I don't think that's wrong or problematic. That's totally fine. That's good. I think contextually in this section, and we'll get to it in the next part of John 15, I think that Jesus is speaking more broadly. I think he's saying fruit is faithfulness to Jesus that is towards love. Faithfulness of Jesus towards love. That it is both rooted in love and the fruit is love. What do I mean by that? I mean rooted is the source of your faithfulness is love. The desire of your service is love. The motivation is love. And the fruit is love. The goal is love. Or the end result is love. So when I serve, is both my desire and my result love motivated? That's fruit. Am I becoming more loving to people that are hard for me to love? That's fruit. Is my love and my affections for Jesus growing and motivating me? That's fruit. And how do I bear fruit? Well, only by remaining, right? And this idea of remaining is by walking by the Spirit. And I want to be careful. To give you a step-by-step, here's how to walk by the Spirit. Do these 3 things and you'll be walking by the Spirit. I want to be careful of any theology on the Spirit that makes being empowered by the Spirit a formula. I also want to be careful of being if you do this, then you will be empowered by the Spirit in this way. I want to be careful of any theology that does that. But I do want to give you 3 things that I think are good to keep in mind as you want to be walking by the Spirit. So first is who the Spirit is. Who is the Spirit? If he empowers us, well, first, the Spirit is God. Second, the Spirit is a person. And third is, John 3 tells us the Spirit is a mystery, blowing where he wants to. The Spirit is God, a person, and a mystery. What does the Spirit do? The Spirit empowers for faithfulness. We just learned in John 14 that the Spirit counsels and guides into truth. And the Spirit magnifies Jesus. One theologian said, the Spirit is like a spotlight on Jesus so that you only see him. So the Spirit empowers, counsels, guides to truth, goodness, and beauty, and magnifies Jesus. And then the last thing I want you to keep in mind as you want to walk by the Spirit is who you are. Who you are. You are a person that needs to put yourself in positions to be empowered by the Spirit. You are a person that needs to put yourself in positions to be empowered by the Spirit. A really simple thing, which again, I want to be careful of formulas, But if I was to give you one really applicable thing, it's this idea of surrendering the sections of your day. I think a lot of times Christians get up and we're like, I'm just going to spend time with Jesus in the morning, and I'm going to go about my day. I want to invite you to surrender the sections of your day. Here's what I mean by that. I want to be wary of using myself as an example because I do not do this perfectly. But it would be like you wake up in the morning and you're surrendering your morning. You're driving to work, you surrender that time of work, whatever is coming next. You don't know what's coming next, but God knows. You're coming home, well, that's the next section of your day, or you're getting lunch with someone. That's a section of your day. And so you're inviting Jesus into the sections of your day. And as you're doing that, you're simultaneously yielding your own control of the sections of your day and asking the Spirit to empower you. Because apart from Him, you can do nothing. So the Spirit is God, a person, a mystery. He empowers, counsels, and magnifies Jesus. And you are a person that needs to be empowered by the Spirit. And so we remain, we abide, we dwell and draw near to Jesus. Verses 9 through 11. As the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. So remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. This is my command: love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants anymore, because a servant doesn't know what his master is doing. I have called you friends because I have made known to you everything I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and produce fruit, and that your fruit should remain, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give you. This is what I command you: love one another. Jesus makes it more specific to what he wants us to remain in as this section goes, to abide in or dwell with, and it's his love. He wants us to remain in his love, and the love that the Father has loved Jesus with. Just for a second, I just want to try to explain what Jesus is inviting you into. He is inviting you into the love of the Trinity. That didn't get you going like it should have. But so let me say this again. He is inviting you into the love of the Trinity, something that has existed since forever. Something that was never created, that has always been and will always be. Michael Reeves, a theologian who wrote a book called The Delighting in the Trinity, he says, it may be that God is triune strictly because of his love. It may be that God is a Trinity strictly because of his love. Because if there was only one person of God, that would be selfish love. If God was two persons, well, that would be exclusive. Like, think of the love between a husband and a wife. That's very exclusive love. It's not a love that invites others in. But the love of three people, well, that's a sharing love. It's a love that invites others in and draws us in. And so the love that the Father has had for the Son forever, and the love that the Son has had for the Father forever, and the Spirit who is between the two, truly bringing the love of the Father and the Son into one another, that is the love that you're invited into. It's a love without any margin of brokenness, without any impurity. Each person of the Trinity perfectly loves each person of the Trinity. And Jesus is inviting you into that. And that love was what truly spilled over into creation, for the triune God to create the world and for him to create you, that you might be drawn into a love that is so deep and so real, and that you can actually know it. And that's what Jesus is inviting you to remain in. Oh, to be loved by a love where you are fully known and fully accepted. And Jesus says that this is a pathway to the fullness of joy. In verse 11, to abide in Jesus, to abide in his love, to keep his words and his commands, that your joy may be complete. The chief command that Jesus gives in this section is to love one another. And this is nothing new. Like, he started this dinner by washing his disciples' feet and saying, the way that I have loved you, so go love others. The chief command is to love one another. He says, if you follow me, you are to do as I do. When I preached on the washing of the feet, I said, how do we know what love is? There's lots of different definitions of love. Well, it's clear in this section that the love that Jesus is talking about throughout this whole dinner sequence in this upper room is a love that is a sacrificial love. It's a self-giving love. It's a laying down your life for others love. And in this section specifically, in verse 12 and 13, he says, love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, but to lay down his life for his friends. Can we not skip the fact that Jesus calls you a friend, believer? Like, the God of all things, with all power and all knowledge, looks at you, and because of your faith, it says, you are my friend. He sees you for who you fully are. The dark parts, the true parts, and he says, friend. Almost every study agrees today that loneliness is one of the fastest growing epidemics in our culture today. We truly are moving to a friendless culture. One where you have the constant ability to look up anything and everything and to be among a group of people on a device in your pocket when you're not actually face-to-face or known by anyone. And that is causing us to be lonely. Among Gen Z, loneliness and fear of relationships is on a rise at an amazing pace. But it's not just younger people. Most men over the age of 35 in this study I was reading would say that they have maybe no actual friends. Most men over the age of 35, if they were honest with themselves, would say that they have maybe no actual friends. I'm 34, so we're almost there. And the state of our souls is hurting because of it. The ancient Greek definition that would have been used during this time that this was being written for friend was one soul in two bodies. One soul in two bodies. Another definition around this time of the New Testament is someone having a special interest or close association with another. A special interest in another. Your soul desperately needs these types of friends. I'm thankful for city groups that have helped facilitate that in my life. But Jesus looks at you and says, I don't just call you someone who serves me or someone who believes in me, but someone I have a special interest in. Someone I truly care about. Someone that I want to associate with. I call you friend. Oh, to be fully loved by Jesus and called a friend. That is the source of life that is flowing to you from the vine that you are called to bear fruit out of. A source that calls you friend, that invites you into the love of the Trinity that you can truly live from. And that is where the motivation for loving others must be drawn from as well. I want to end with just some quick application of if remaining or abiding or dwelling with is so important, here's 5 things that I think are important for you to remember in order to remain or abide. And the first is this. It's recognize that abiding does not depend on you. God is sovereign over your faith. So first and foremost, he cares about your abiding much more than you care about your abiding. And his Spirit is in you, helping you to abide. Your salvation didn't depend on you. God called you and saved you when you believed. Your sanctification or your growth in Christ-likeness does not depend on you. Philippians 2 says that he will complete it. And your ultimate glorification at the end does not depend on you. It depends on God, first and foremost. Now, the mystery is that the next four things very much depend on you and are active things for you to abide. So the second is for you to draw near to Jesus. Draw near to Jesus in prayer. Draw near to Jesus in his word. Throughout John 15 and John 14, it says, if my words remain in you, well, you need to know his words then. Draw near to Jesus in silence and solitude. Draw near to Jesus in confession of sin and repentance and turning away from Jesus. 3 is to ask Jesus for him to bear fruit. Ask him to bear fruit in your life. He desires to bear fruit in your life. So ask him for it, and anything will be given to you in his name. 4 is let the root and the fruit be love. I already explained that, but let the source of your motivation be love, and let the result of your motivation be love. And finally, abide for God's glory. Abide for God's glory and your joy that it may be complete. I'm going to end by reading a poem by Frida Hanbury. She's an older, really old woman who wrote different hymns and stuff. But there's this poem that she wrote out of John 15 that I think is really beautiful, and I'm going to end it as our kind of our prayer to end. 'Tis only a little branch, a thing so fragile and weak, but that little branch has a message true to give, could it only speak. I'm only a little branch, I live by a life not mine, for the sap that flows through my tendrils small is the lifeblood of the vine. No power indeed have I, the fruit of myself to bear, but since I'm part of the living vine, its fruitfulness I share. Dost thou ask how I abide, how this life I can maintain? I am bound to the vine by life's strong band, and I only need remain. Where first my life was given, in the spot where I am set, upborne and upheld as the days go by the stem which bears me yet. I fear not the days to come, I dwell not upon the past, as moment by moment I draw a life which forevermore shall last. I bask in the sun's bright beams, which with sweetness fills my fruit, yet I own not the clusters hanging there, for they all come from the root. A life which is not my own, but another's life in me. This is the message the branch would speak, a message to thee and me. O struggle not to abide, nor labor to bring forth fruit, but let Jesus unite thee to himself as the vine branch to the root. So simple, so deep, so strong, that union with him shall be. His life shall forever replace thine own, and his love shall flow through thee. For his spirit's fruit is love, and love shall thy life become, and forevermore on his heart of love thy spirit shall have her home. Amen.